This is a Dell Latitude E6420, a laptop that I already covered about 2 years ago now. I've had this laptop for a while now, and I've used it quite a bit, hence why I covered it as early as I did. And now today it returns because it's dead. Alright, it's not that dramatic, but this machine has developed a pretty bizarre issue that has meant the computer no longer works. Basically, about a year ago, I was trying to boot something on this computer, and as part of that, I attempted to change the BIOS mode from Legacy to UEFI. You know, a perfectly normal thing to do on most computers from 2012 and onwards, and something I've done on this exact computer in the past. But this time, something was different. This time, after making the BIOS change and restarting the computer, it no longer booted at all. It would power on, but it wouldn't progress through its power on self-test. It would just lock up at the end of it. It would recognize key presses for like a super short period of time, but then the machine locks up before it can progress. And I've even noticed when a hard drive is present, the BIOS can still read the drive, but again, something just causes it to hang on the splash screen. About the only other sign of any life at all is that it will initiate the built-in display test on boot, but after that's done, same problem. I spent a while trying different things to get this to work again, including removing the drives, disconnecting the CMOS battery in the hopes that would clear the BIOS, and swapping things like the RAM. Nothing got this to work again. Some people online have had this same issue, and it seems that if it does not come back on its own, then the motherboard is bricked. Now, if you haven't seen that original video, or even if you did, I don't recall explaining it super well. There's some additional context surrounding this machine. I originally got this laptop for free, but it was a pretty basic model. It originally had a dual-core i5 with integrated graphics, 2 GB of RAM, a 250 GB hard drive, a DVD-ROM drive, a crappy Broadcom wireless card, and an incredibly trash screen. And it also had a few issues to sort out. But since I liked it enough, I decided to spend some money on it. Among the things I bought was a replacement motherboard with a dedicated GPU, which was an option for this computer, but this model did not have that. And there were a couple other upgrades too, like a better CPU and some more RAM, and this is how I originally covered the machine. Because I did the motherboard swap on this machine, technically, I still have the original motherboard. And assuming it still works after sitting in storage for a while, there is an easy fix to this problem. It's just not really one that's ideal. As of filming this currently, the computer has an i7-2620M CPU with 8 GB of RAM, no drives in it at all, and it did have an NVIDIA NVS 4200M dedicated GPU, but I guess now that's useless. It's kind of a shame this thing stopped working since, you know, I paid money for it, but that's how it goes sometimes. Even with the technically downgraded motherboard, it's not like the computer would be bad anyway. In fact, in some cases, honestly, it seems like an easier option rather than having to deal with an old Fermi business laptop GPU that overheats like crazy. I've already sort of shown the disassembly process for this thing in the past, but it's kind of about what you would expect. First, the old components have to be removed from the board, including the CPU, since they're going to be reused on the new board. The palm rest has to be removed just like a lot of other laptops from this time, although it's a little easier on this one since it's just a handful of screws on the bottom, all of which are specifically labeled. Then the keyboard trim and the keyboard itself have to be removed, and under the keyboard there are a couple more screws. Then the palm rest can be removed carefully, and then the motherboard is revealed and this thing suddenly becomes incredibly top heavy. It's not the worst laptop ever to take apart. I mean, it is all labeled on the bottom, and basically all of the components you might want to change can be accessed on the bottom, so it's not like most people would probably have a reason to disassemble one of these this far. Finally, there are 2 ribbon cables connecting things to the motherboard, and there's also the power jack, the speakers, and the display cables, all of which have to be disconnected from the motherboard. 4 more screws later, the motherboard can be freed from the machine. Here it is. Again, kind of a shame it failed, but oh well. With the board removed, there's not much to this machine's frame. I suppose that's how it has to be designed in order to be serviceable from the bottom. Now these motherboards are technically interchangeable. That was how I was able to swap them in the first place. However, there are a few things to consider. While they are a similar shape, the DGPU motherboard has a lot more stuff going on in the GPU area, as aside from the GPU itself, there's some extra power circuitry, so the PCB is a little longer and shaped around the cooling fan on this version. This means the left side I/O board is significantly smaller on the DGPU variant compared to the integrated variant, and the same can be said for the power jack. I only discovered this when I tried to fit this board in and discovered none of the I/O in this area would fit. Now I did also have to swap over the express card slot housing, but afterwards it was the same assembly process, just in reverse. I quickly reinstalled the heatsink and stuff that would make it run rather quickly because I wanted to test to see if this board still worked. And thankfully, when I plugged it in, nothing started burning, and the board, after a very, very long period of time, eventually booted up to the BIOS. After some more parts were reinstalled, I let this machine sit on the diagnostic screen for some time while I was preparing an OS to install. The CPU temperatures were, unsurprisingly, a little high, but everything seemed to work. The last thing I needed was some drives. There was this crappy hard drive still in it. I guess I put this in here so I wouldn't lose the screws. I guess I'll put it in and see what happens. I also had the DVD drive from my E6520 that I can't use in there, so guess that'll go in here as well. I did boot it up with that hard drive in it, and it started clicking a little bit, and unsurprisingly, it didn't have anything bootable at all. So the actual drive that's going to go in this machine is another part from my E6530, this 1TB Seagate SSHD thing. I don't know, it still works, at least for now, and I don't have an SSD to use in this at the moment. As for the operating system, I originally installed Xubuntu on this machine, specifically because I wanted something a little different from normal, and also, a few days ago, Canonical released Ubuntu 26.04, and all of its derivatives followed suit. Unfortunately, I should have seen this coming. As I mentioned earlier, this computer has a Broadcom-based Dell wireless card in it that Xubuntu wanted nothing to do with. And even after manually installing the drivers myself, not only did the wireless not want to work, but the Ethernet on this computer also did not want to work, which meant it had no internet at all. So for the time being, I had to abandon the Xubuntu idea pretty quickly. What I ended up putting on this computer instead was the exact same install of Windows 8.1 that was used for the review video, and the install that was done in that ancient Windows 8.1 video from a few years ago. I still had the disk image of it, and it was already a setup copy of Windows that wouldn't be nearly as bad on a mechanical hard drive as Windows 10 or 11 would be. So I copied that to the hard drive, and since it's Windows 8.1, it did just boot up on its own and reconfigured itself. All I had to do was let drivers reinstall themselves, and I had to run Windows Update, but it was otherwise a perfectly functional operating system. I did a little bit of stress testing on it since technically I had to repaste that CPU. This thing definitely runs pretty warm, even with the absence of the GPU. Earlier in the diagnostics phase, this machine was already running at like 60 degrees. And during benchmarking, the temps on this machine got pretty out of control. So it's all technically done now. I mean, everything's working about as well as it did before the motherboard was replaced. I guess technically it counts as a fix. I mean, the computer is working again. Just now I have a DGPU motherboard that's, at the moment, useless. So as for the future of this computer, I'm still not really sure. For a while, I saw this machine as a complementary PC to my newer, bigger, and beefier Latitude E6520. But in recent times, I kind of think that position has largely been superseded by my Latitude E6510. While the E6510 is older and has its own issues, it just kind of works better, it's in much better shape, and I think it just has more potential. It feels kind of a weird thing to say about a computer, but I'm kind of over this thing, to be honest. I had ideas to upgrade this machine even further, and it was even going to be a future video, but honestly, I don't think that's going to happen now because this E6420 just doesn't seem to work very well compared to my other Latitudes. I've just had a lot of trouble with it when I feel like I probably shouldn't have. What I haven't mentioned yet is that the DGPU motherboard that was installed in this machine at the beginning of the video wasn't even the first board I got. This is already the second board. When I got the original motherboard that I purchased and installed it in the laptop and went to turn it on, one of the board's capacitors just went up in smoke. So what I'm trying to say between that board and this one is that I've now gone through two different GPU motherboards that have both failed in the span of about a year. And at this point, honestly, I don't really have it in me for a third one. So yeah, kind of a mildly depressing revisiting video, I guess. I mean, the machine is technically working again right now, and I have some ideas in mind on how to improve it, like for instance, getting rid of that crappy wireless card. When I started working on this video, I thought it would be a lot more positive. I was still thinking about huge upgrades at the time, but even with this integrated board, which is technically this computer's third motherboard now, the BIOS behavior on this machine is just strange. And now I have a bit of anxiety around the BIOS whenever I do anything with it. Ugh, I don't even know how to end this video. This was just a super weird one. I mean, as far as other updates on it go, I did benchmark it like I mentioned earlier, and it benchmarks around the same place. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of data on the old board because I only started running Cinebench on things right around the same time that the old motherboard died, but it seemed like it benched around the same place it did before, which, I mean, the CPU didn't change, so that makes sense. Although the graphics performance obviously took quite a dip. And this thing still runs super hot, even when not benchmarking, just in general. That's just kind of how it is. The only other real problem with it is that the battery is still terrible, and in fact it's even worse than when I covered it beforehand. I am still going to keep this computer, at least for as long as it works. After all, it is in pretty good shape, and it's always useful to have spare computers that don't really have a purpose but are just ready to go at any moment for a future video project, but that's probably about it. Unfortunately, I can't see any big upgrades happening now. Nothing's off the table necessarily. I mean, we'll see what the future holds. Maybe I'm out of my league and this isn't really as big of a deal as I think it is. Sometimes that happens.